no problems here on Washington Mall, where you can see there is an atmosphere of a party, a celebration, something that people across America have wanted to be part of and done everything they can to be part of it. Adam Brooks, let's talk to you, because you've been in America a while now and witnessed other inaugurations, but I think that anyone would say this is something special, this is something different.
There really is something in the air here today. Of course, inaugurations are always spectaculars, but you know, John, this morning when I was walking across Washington in the freezing cold in order to get here to the Capitol this morning, I walked for a little while alongside an elderly African-American man, an old Washingtonian, and we chatted for a little bit, and he said that he had witnessed many inaugurations in the Capitol. He'd been present at many of them in the crowd, but he said this one really does have something special about it, because of course it's the first time an African-American man has been president of the United States. And it's also, I think, this extraordinary sense of transition, this extraordinary difference in personality, in the tone and style of leadership that we expect to see from Barack Obama. He is almost the sort of anti-Bush. You couldn't get somebody more different to George W. Bush than the man who is going to be sworn in as president here in a couple of hours' time.
But interesting as well, Adam, is you know, I was speaking a few moments ago about that the transition can often be a very difficult affair after there's been a hard-fought election campaign. But actually George W. Bush, for all that he was ideological in the early stages and the kind of whole argument over the neocon policies, was very warm towards Barack Obama and wanted, it's almost like he wanted to celebrate what America had achieved in electing its first African-American president.
He did. It's been a very, very smooth transition, and people have remarked on that repeatedly. Think back to the pettiness of some other transitions. Think back to when the Clinton administration handed over to George W. Bush. And on Inauguration Day, the Bush staffers turned up at the White House to find that on all the computer keyboards, the letter W, as in George W. Bush, had been removed from the computer keyboards, which was a sort of remarkably petty thing to have done. Now, this transition's been very, very different. A lot of it, I think, is down to the Obama transition team, who've been fantastically activists. They were very, very well organized, and they moved out, fanned out across Washington very, very quickly with a very clear idea of what they wanted to achieve. And Obama himself stepped up and showed extraordinary leadership very early on, immediately after his election, in fact, as George W. Bush appeared to be more and more of a lame duck president, as America's economy went further and further into very troubled waters. People started looking very early on to Barack Obama for leadership, and he provided it. And George W. Bush has been happy to accommodate that. And the transition really has gone remarkably smoothly.
And in terms of the people that we have seen Obama appoint as his Secretary of State, as Treasury Secretary, who he's kept on as defence, what does that tell us about the way he's going to operate?
I think it tells us that he's going to be a rather more centrist and rather more pragmatic politician than many took him for. I think there were many, particularly on the progressive end of American politics, out there on the left, who are hoping for very radical changes, and perhaps for personalities in Obama's cabinet who reflected that desire for a much more progressive, much more radical set of policies. Now, keeping on Robert Gates at defense, a Republican, bringing in people like Timothy Geithner at Treasury, bringing Hillary Clinton in as Secretary of State, bringing in James Jones, a four-star general, to be National Security Advisor. These things do not speak to a radical set of departures. They speak to a centrist sense of continuity and a rather pragmatic view of the world. Obama wants to get things done, clearly, and he's bringing in heavyweights, regardless of their political or ideological orientation, to get stuff done. And I think many people are very relieved by that, but many of Obama's core supporters from the left show signs of being, well, perhaps a little bit cautious about it, even a little bit disappointed.
Let us talk to Katty Kay, who's going to be at the vantage point just outside the White House, Lafayette Square, where the parade is going to pass by. And Katty, you've covered Washington politics for so long now. I just wonder what your reflections are of the way that Barack Obama has assembled the cabinet, the key people that will be around him for this next period.
Well, he's certainly shown himself, hasn't he, John, to be somebody who's not shy of bringing in a lot of talent, people with big egos in some cases, people who are very clever, people from different political perspectives, and I think that suggests that he's a president who is going to govern broadly, who's prepared to take in different points of view, and then perhaps bring people close to the middle. It was interesting, I was up in Harvard just before Christmas, talking to some of the people who had taught him up there, and I was trying to ask them, you know, what everyone says Barack Obama is very clever. What kind of clever is he? What kind of intelligence does he bring to the presidency of the United States? And the thing that I kept hearing is that it's not that he's so much a Nobel Prize-winning planet brain, but that he is very good at synthesizing different political positions, being in a room with different people, all of whom are very clever, all of whom different points of view, and bringing those points of view together to find a point of unity. It was almost a management style that the people up there were telling me about, and that they spotted that 20, 30 years ago, and I think that's how he's going to govern, that he's going to be somebody who has different points of view in a room, and he's going to try and synthesize those points of view in order to reach a middle, or what he feels is the most and best appropriate course. It's a kind of non-ideological, pragmatic management style that I think he's going to bring to this job.
And Cathy, would you expect sort of a kind of flurry of announcements, of a surge of activity, if you like, in these first few weeks, first few months of him being in office?
That's what I'm understanding. I was speaking to somebody from Congress yesterday, a Democrat who was close to Barack Obama yesterday, who was saying, yeah, we do expect that in the first few weeks you will see legislative activity, you will see regulatory activity, particularly with the financial system, that almost their priority, even before getting this stimulus package through in the middle of February, is going to try to be to stabilize the banking system. They have already. This is unprecedented for a president-elect. Before he's got into office, he has already got through a major piece of financial legislation through the Congress by getting this second tranche of the TARP program. So he's already moving. He's already effectively been governing for the last week, and they say you're going to see more of that in the next few weeks. I don't think that this is an administrative team, a transition team that is going to come in and be shy or reticent about its legislative agenda. They've been working very hard on this since last summer. They've been preparing this transition. In the last few weeks, they have been frantically busy working with members of Congress to make sure that they can get their packages through. There have been rumblings. You know, it's not all easy. There are people on the right and on the left of the Democratic Party who are already criticizing some of the elements of this. But I think he has broad support for programs that not all have always been popular. The TARP spending program has not always been popular, but he does seem to have broad support, and I think that's a function of the crisis that America is in and of his characteristic of reaching out to both sides. I think that's going to be a real signature of his administration. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't have problems, but that change of tone, members of Congress have told me in the last few weeks, is already huge.
You know, everything that Barack Obama does now is going to be scrutinized so closely by everyone, not just here in the United States, not just here in this domestic audience that he has got to please behind me, but around the world. And there is also a sense of expectation and hope, and to some degree celebration today. Nowhere more so than in Kenya, the ancestral homeland of the Obama family, from where our correspondent Karen Allen now reports.
There is a huge sense of expectation here in Kogelo. Among the women selling mangoes and chapatis are men in elaborate headdresses dancing in the sun. Of course, the Obama family that normally would live just up the road are absent. They're in Washington to witness the swearing in for themselves. But despite their absence, it hasn't dampened spirits here. We're expecting huge television screens to be erected here at Barack Obama Primary so that people here who consider Barack Obama one of their own sons can witness his inaugural speech themselves. So what are people's expectations? Well, many are hoping that an Obama administration will see strengthened bilateral ties between the US and Kenya. And they're hoping that Barack Obama will use his influence to urge undemocratic African leaders to step aside.
Karen Allen reporting there from Kenya, and let me just tell you what's happening at the moment. Barack Obama is having tea with George W. Bush, the outgoing president, in the White House, and then they will make their way to the Capitol behind me for the inauguration process and the swearing of the oath by Barack Obama. And then George W. Bush will leave Washington, head back towards Texas, and Barack Obama will watch the parade and move into the White House and get down to work. And George W. Bush has described that as one of the kind of a lonely moment where you suddenly do feel the weight of responsibility